Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. We are starting in 2 minutes. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome you to the 9th European Dialogue on Internet Governance. And I would especially like to welcome all those who are attending EuroDIG for the first time, which includes the Deputy Minister of Transport, Information Technology and Communication, Minister Borisov. Thank you for welcoming this community. But I'm also very happy to see so many well-known faces, and I thank you for staying committed over the years. Later today, we have also the honor to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister Ivalo Kalfin, We expect him at 6 o'clock. We are here in this region for the second time. In 2011, we organized EuroDIG in Serbia, in Belgrade, which is just 400 kilometers away from Sofia. Yesterday, 4 years later, around 150 people met for the first Southeastern European dialogue on internet governance to discuss the regional aspects of internet governance. Bulgaria, in this respect, is the opener for this new initiative. In Serbia, we can definitely find some of the roots. Visiting every year another European country proved to be the right concept because it had an impact in that region, it connected communities, engaged new people into the internet governance debate. And apart from that, I truly believe it also helps to better understand the European among each other. EuroDIG has come a long way. It's what has started in 2008 in Paris over a glass of wine is meanwhile recognized as the European IGF. Thanks to the ongoing support of our long-standing partners, the Council of Europe, the Swiss Federal Office of Communication, the European Broadcasting Union, EuroDIG could develop as an open and inclusive platform for equal-footed discussion and exchange among all stakeholders. Our aim is that everybody should have a speaking right, and nobody should feel excluded by not being listed as a speaker. It is, moreover, the intention and the goal of EuroDIG to provide a greater attention to the audience and not focus on the speaker on stage only. Also, the program is not developed by a small program committee in a top-down manner. It is developed through an inclusive 6-month participation process. This concept is not very common yet and sometimes challenging for session org teams to deal with speaker requests. From the EuroDIG Secretariat, we do our best to balance the different views and to facilitate a solid ground for this special concept. As the overall participation process became more and more complex over the year and its impact is increasing, it was important to evolve the EuroDIG structure and to engage new partners, which share the responsibility for the strategic development of EuroDIG. Recently, RIPE NCC and ISOC became EuroDIG partners. With the European Commission and with ICANN, we are in the stage of reinforcing and give more structure to our already close cooperation. These partners are the pillar of EuroDIG to guarantee a well-balanced stability and sustainability. But as you know, without funding, ideas remain ideas. And I would therefore like to take this opportunity and thank the EuroDIG sponsors. My special thanks this year goes to Ilya Bazulanko from Unicard, our host 2015. His team worked so hard during the last couple of months in order to make EuroDIG in Sofia happen. I wish you 2 days of fruitful discussion on European internet governance matters, and please do not hesitate to raise your voice at any time by respecting other opinions. Ilya, I would like to welcome you on stage.
Thank you, Sandra. Good morning to everyone. My name is Ilya Bazliankov and I represent the local host this year. On behalf of my team and the whole EuroDIG team, I would like to welcome you to the great city of Sofia and wish you great discussions in those 2 days, but not only discussions, also talks and informal meetings. How this started? It started in the ICANN meeting in 2013 in Singapore. We had a discussion during the Gala event with Sandra, and she convinced me to accept to be the local host for the next year. In those couple of months, it was really a hard work, but I see now that it was worth to. If you have any question during those 2 days, you can find me or my team in the rooms or outside of the registration desk. We're here to help. With this, I would like to welcome Valery Borisov, our Deputy Minister of Transport, IT and Communication.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, first of all, let me welcome you on behalf of Minister of Transport, Information Technologies and Communications, Ivo Moskovsky, on this great event in our very beautiful city, Sofia. This is the 8th edition of the European Dialogue for Internet Governance, EuroDIG 2015. As an open platform for informal discussions, the European Dialogue on Internet Governance has a valuable positive impact on the development of public policies in the field of Internet governance. To host such a significant event represents not only a challenge and responsibility for us, but is also an occasion worthy of satisfaction, as it represents one of the important steps in the search for working solutions in the implementation of significant transformations in Internet governance by introducing the multi-stakeholder model. Creating a structure of sustainable Internet governance as a global resource possesses a number of significant challenges that can only be overcome by reaching a consensus. The global community has to deal with these problems through the adoption of domestic and international agreements to achieve stability and reduce the potential damages that may result from the nature of a globally connected world. Every aspect of the Internet needs to be carefully examined. Accessibility and security, social and legal norms, the relationships between public and private sectors, freedom of expressions, and the protection of human rights. The way forward will require determined efforts of many stakeholders and institutions that have an interest in critical nature of Internet governance. How does multi-stakeholder governance relate to important governance principles like representation, participation, accountability, responsibility, transparency, efficiency? This dialogue should take place both at global and national level. Bulgaria has outlined its priorities in this area, which are in line with the EU priorities and objectives for the construction of a digital single market. Since these priorities require widespread use of the Internet, for their implementation, the country is actively working on facing its widespread use. The Internet is a powerful tool for achieving economic growth and foundation for the application of innovative practices and encouraging research. A good example of this beneficial cooperation between state administration, businesses, NGOs, and academia is the country's application to ICANN for the registration of a national top-level domain in Cyrillic. Surveys and the extensive public consultations with all stakeholders were carried out before the decision to apply was made. The positive response to the application of ICANN was immediately followed by a launch of a procedure for selecting a candidate to create and administrate the Bulgarian top-level domain registry in Cyrillic. We are following closely the ongoing transformational process to international approach with the participation of all stakeholders when it comes to internet governance. And we are bringing our contribution to the elaboration of options.
Now I would like to ask the panelists for the opening plenary on stage. Our moderator, Gergana Passi, would you please invite your panelists?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sofia. My name is Gergana Passi. I'm the digital champion of Bulgaria, and I will have the pleasure and honor to moderate these very interesting people on the stage, trying to set up the scene for the whole discussion this day, shaping up internet, but much more focused on one very topical issue, shaping up the digital single market, something which has been promised by the new president of the European Commission, and we all are happy to see that he is keeping his promise with the new strategy on digital single market being launched by the Commission almost a month ago. So today we have we have 5 people around the table who are going to discuss the digital single market topics for you from 5 different points of view. Before this, let me share with you some numbers which would give you an idea of the online activity worldwide at the moment. I find these numbers very, very interesting, and I want to share them just to have an idea of what the context in which we discuss digital single market is. I actually took it from the Bruegel website. Just as long as we are discussing the digital single market in the next 1 hour and a half, worldwide, more than 3 billion emails will have been sent. Within next 1 hour and a half, more than 17,000 websites will have been created. More than 30 million Google searches will have been made. More than 900,000 Skype calls will have been made. 19.5 million YouTube videos will have been watched. And 1.5 million tweets will have been tweeted. Hopefully some of them will come out from this room. With these numbers, I will just propose that we set our watches right with a video message sent from Vice President of the Commission, Mr. Oettinger. Are you going to help me with this?
Dear Minister, ladies and gentlemen, dear European friends, unfortunately, I cannot be with you in person today in Sofia, but I welcome this opportunity to address you on the occasion of EuroDIG 2015. Today's event is taking place in the middle of a crucial year for internet governance and internet economy in general. You know very well how the internet and digital technologies are transforming our world. This presents many new opportunities, but can also be extremely disruptive. Europe must embrace these positive aspects of the transformation, ensuring that its citizens and companies can fully benefit from the digital revolution. Digital transforms our economy and helps providing better services at better prices, offering consumers more choice and creating new sources of employment. Internet is one of the most important sources of economic growth. However, there are still so many obstacles that we need to get rid of in order to have a flourishing digital economy in Europe and for the European Union to become a stronger global player. That is why we are focusing our European efforts on creating a genuine digital single market with the aim to make 28 national markets into one. This is a high priority for the European Commission. Just a month ago, we published our strategy towards this goal and are working hard to make it happen right now. Bringing down barriers within Europe could contribute an additional 415 billion euro to our European GDP. A digital single market can create opportunities for new startups and allow existing companies to grow and benefit from the scale of a market of over 500 million people. I strongly believe that if we quickly implement our new strategy, Europe can lead in the global digital economy. Of course, the well-functioning internet is a prerequisite for this. Without an adequate framework for its governance, the digital single market will not be able to fully deliver its benefits. In the global, hyper-connected digital world, Europe is not an isolated island. Many other players in other parts of the world are confronted with the same challenges posed by the digital revolution, and while some are in line with our values and ideas as to how internet should be governed, others may have different views. This can bring risks that we should not underestimate, especially in a changing global political landscape. In this context, ladies and gentlemen, EuroDIG represents an ideal place to discuss these issues and to better define together a pan-European approach to internet governance. Europe has to play its part in ensuring that the internet remains open, stable and secure around the world. At the same time, EuroDIG conclusions will provide an important input to the Internet Global Forum so that the European point of view is adequately reflected as a tool to increase the understanding on internet governance and the level of inclusiveness of these discussions. Nonetheless, there is always room for improvement, particularly in order to ensure a balanced ecosystem that is more inclusive, democratic, legitimate and transparent. The ongoing IANA stewardship transition and ICANN accountability processes are an important evolution in this respect. In the last few months, an incredible amount of work has been done by the global community, and Europe and Europeans have contributed very much to this. However, many crucial details are still to be defined. This is an historical moment and we have a crucial window of opportunity in the coming months to make it a true success. Ladies and gentlemen, this year is also important as a 10-year implementation period of World Summit on Information Society is coming to end and decisions will need to be taken on the future of this process. In parallel, the discussions on the renewal of the Internet Global Forum will be taking place. All these processes are closely linked. Europe and Europeans are actively and constructively contributing to the ongoing global debates. Only a strong and clear European voice can help increase our influence in such debates. EuroDIG is an important vehicle to define this, to define our voice. I wish you all a fruitful meeting. I'm confident that you will bring forward the discussions in many areas, and I am looking forward to reading your conclusions. Thank you all for your attention.
Very important message indeed from the Commission. Now turning back to the panelists, I would like just to briefly represent each of them, starting with Valeri Borisov next to me, who is, as you saw already, Deputy Minister responsible for transport and ICT, very active promoter for years of e-government and digital agenda in Bulgaria. And even now working actively on some very important legislation related to e-government. Next to him, Valeri is obviously going to represent the point of view of member states in all this process, in particular Bulgaria. Michele is from Ireland, and he's going to represent here the business and the industry. Actually, he's himself, he's a founder and owner and CEO, please feel free to correct me if I somewhere get wrong, of Black Knight. That's the largest Irish domain and registrar and hosting company, and he has had many awards. I'm not going to quote them, but he is known as a very active and sometimes outspoken member of the internet industry. Very much looking forward to hearing from you. Olivier, he's going to represent all of us actually as internet users, and the part I like most in his CV is that himself is an internet user since 1988, so almost since the Berlin Wall fell down. Olivier, he is also involved in many internet projects. Megan, you know, everybody here knows Megan. She is representing the European Commission. She is principal advisor in DG Connect. And actually I was astonished to realize that she has started working for the Commission back in 1991. Is that correct? That's really impressive, Megan. But before that, she's been active on, and she has worked for the United Nations Development Program in Africa. And Hans-Peter Holland, who is here to represent the views of the technical community. And he himself, he's a chair of RIPE. Along with this, however, in his daily life, he's a strategic advisor in a company called Visma, that is a company selling cross-border online services. So welcome to each of you. I would suggest, because we ourselves are advised to keep the discussion as interactive as possible, so promise no long presentation, but I would suggest that each of the panelists start here with not more than 2 minutes brief presentation on what he or she is, which interest he or she is representing, what topics from the digital single market he or she is most interested in. Valeri, starting with you.
Thank you very much, Gergana. I will try to present to you what is the role of the state in internet governance process, or at least what are the perception of the state, what should the state do in order better to manage the internet in a positive way, because internet is...
Michele.
Thanks, good morning. You know, what exactly is my role up here? I suppose my thing with a lot of this is that the fact that I even have to talk about any of this is a problem. I mean, from a business perspective, we just want stuff to work. I mean, when people talk about internet governance, I kind of stand back and scratch my head and think to myself, surely that terminology itself is flawed. I mean, the idea that government would want to get involved does concern me, because generally speaking, governments, in much as I love you all dearly, you're like can I put this politely and diplomatically? Well, I have to try. I'm on my best behavior. Governments are slow moving. Legislation is slow. Digital by its very nature is fast. It's agile. It moves quickly. It'll move much faster than the legislation and much faster than certain business models. And I suppose one of the things is just a practical example. I mean, this concept of a digital single market, it's a concept. It's an ideal. It's a unicorn. It's a wonderful concept, but the reality is, Bulgaria is a member of the European Union. I pay for Netflix. I can't access Netflix. That's really screwed up. That's just one thing. I mean, the idea that the copyright holders are kind of holding all of this back, that the intellectual property rights are driving themselves forward in such a way that they're holding the rest of us back. That is one of the things that concerns me deeply.
Thank you very much, Olivier.
Thank you very much, Gorgina, and it's a real pleasure to be here in Sofia, beautiful city. It's a real pressure on my shoulders to be representing the point of view of the internet end users, since we're all end users, and I hope that we'll have a lot of interaction with the room and with Twitter and with people who are following remotely. End users really are looking at an internet that is affordable, that is fast, reliable, ubiquitous. We spoke about the ability to access the internet pretty much from everywhere in any way possible. And as Michele actually mentioned here, the ability to access content regardless of where one is, especially as far as Europe is concerned. It's a real frustrating experience to be traveling across Europe and being in a location where you click on a video and it says that content is not available to you in your location. And you think, why? Some webcasts have been in this situation as well. And one really wonders why this is the case when we keep on speaking about European integration and all of Europe working together. The ability to use e-commerce without borders is another huge problem. I'm not sure how many of you have tried to use your credit card online from specific locations, and the answer was, sorry, we don't serve your area, or we're not able to ship to your area. So the problems that people are faced with and end users are faced with are often completely related to the problems in the real world. Shipping of goods, use of credit card, and the laws, the local laws that appear to be going completely against this concept of a free market economy that spans all of Europe. As far as the European single market is concerned, there appears to be also a differentiation between members of the European Union and non-members of the European Union, and that's also something which introduces barriers. And as far as regulation is concerned, there's always a concern that over-regulation, and I think Michele has also said that, over-regulation is also a potential stop or a way to slow down the growth of the internet in Europe and of internet services in Europe. So I'm not saying regulation is bad. In fact, there has been some very good regulation done. For example, the use of mobile phones when roaming across Europe has seen a dramatic change by the European Union asking for lower roaming charges to be introduced for people to be able to use their mobiles and across Europe without having a crazy bill. But if one is going to look at regulation, then it has to be regulation that serves the end users and that serves all of us, not regulation that prevents us from being able to access the services that we want to access.
Megan.
Thank you very much. Well, first I'm going to do something that you will recognize. I'm going to take away your microphone because we don't have one at our table. That's typical Commission behavior. So there we are. First, nasty action from the Commission. Second, it always reminds me of what Ronald Reagan used to say. He said the 10 most dangerous words in the world were, I'm here from the government and we're here to help. That's perhaps 9 words, but that's what he used to say. So I'm here from the Commission, and of course, we're here to help. This is our position, the Ronald Reagan approach. But that's a joke. But really, I mean, the thing that I think is interesting in this context is that, you know, it's about 20 years ago, more or less, if you don't count exactly, that the internet really became something that was of more or less daily use. Of course, it's increased dramatically over time. It's about the single world and the internet world in terms of movement of goods, movement of services, and some of you have identified those things. So I'm not going to go into all the details of what the single market is supposed to do and how it's supposed to improve and make a better digital single market, but all it really is supposed to do is make the single market online as efficient and effective as it is offline. And that's not to say that everything offline is perfect, not at all. So that's exactly what the digital single market is supposed to do. You heard Commissioner Oettinger say Europe is not an island, and we've seen also over the last 20 years how the digital single market has not just improved intra-European trade and exchanges, but also opened Europe up to external trade. And I think this is one of the most important things. The internet, by its very nature and definition, goes all around the world and doesn't recognize borders. So a digital single market should also not recognize borders and allow all of us to use the internet more and better. And why is this important in the context of internet governance? Because, of course, without a safe, reliable, open, functioning internet, we won't have any digital economy. We won't have any digital single market. The digital economy is the one that's growing faster and better. Many of you know that many European countries, not all, but many, are in desperate need of a real economic boost in terms of growth. The digital economy, we think, is an area where we can really see this boost and this movement. You have the potential for a small company in Helsinki, for example, to have 1 billion users. I'm thinking of Angry Birds, for example, a small company, Swedish, Estonian, called Skype, that can suddenly have a worldwide impact. I mean, these are things that, well, certainly 100 years ago, you would never have dreamed possible. So I think these are things that really show us the importance and drama of the single market, but also the importance of internet governance, making sure that the internet works and it is reliable, safe, etc. And this is also, as Mr. Oettinger said, too, a very important year for internet governance. We have the WSIS Plus 10 review coming up, the extension of the Internet Governance Forum. The EuroDIG is an input to the Internet Governance Forum, and I would really like to see an interesting and dynamic discussion here. So now you can steal this.
Hans Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Representing the technical community is probably even more difficult than trying to represent the business community or the users. I mean, we're here just to support the business or serve the users. I'm chairman of RIPE, Réseau IP Européens, European IP Networks, which was founded in '89. A group of people met to solve all the issues of internet in Europe. We're still working on that. We have a technical focus, and in order to help us support our open forums, meetings twice a year, everybody can participate, up to 600 participants on the last couple of meetings. We have formed a secretariat, the RIPE NCC, Network Coordination Center, who is also the regional internet registry for Europe, where all the ISPs get their IP addresses. So that's kind of the focus on our community, is to make sure that we have a network that works. So we have since the beginning built a network of networks in Europe that supports an open market. So to us it's kind of like digital open market. It's supposed to be there. So we realize that there is a real world out there with regulations and laws and so on. But the real success on the internet so far has been that we built the network in cooperation to make a network of networks works cross borders so that people can communicate and do business together. So in that respect, it's kind of the challenge to the rest of you guys to make sure that we continue to do that. And one of the important things to think about in the future now is that in order to allow everybody to get on the internet and all devices and whatever you want to connect to be there, we also need to focus on the transition that we have into the next generation internet to IPv6. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to tweet some of the things you share so that we are in virtual contact with all the interested parties. Now it's the audience which should have the floor. So I will regularly turn to you so that I'm sure that there is no comment shared or question unanswered. I must tell you that we also have, how do we call it, remote participants who are going to share with us questions coming on Twitter to the panelists and also coming through WebEx. So we'll try really to be in touch with all the interested parties. But now really the floor is yours. On the back row. I would only ask you that we keep questions as short as possible, represent yourself, and if you have any of the panelists you would like to address the question to, just specify this, please.
Good morning, I am Jon Thorhalsson, the President of Secure, and I have one issue to add to the many issues discussed here. For the single market to work, the end user has to have a trust and confidence in the internet. And that is a big issue today, which has not been addressed here at all. The end user, every day he reads in the paper about some internet fraud, somebody has broken into the bank account or whatever. We all know those stories here. And with the single market, I think this is going to be
agencies taking part in the discussions that we're having here. Recently, there has been a lot of involvement from Interpol, Europol. They are beefing up their crews, so they have more people working in those departments that go and stamp against fraud. Yes, we are in a pivotal moment at the moment when perhaps the fraudsters and all of the gangsters of this world have had a chance to move forward before everyone else has, but I'm convinced that these issues are going to be addressed, and with the involvement of Interpol and Europol, the collaboration between countries, which was already in place before, but perhaps not in the digital space, is certainly being reinforced.
Thank you.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Oh, that's not what you'd say if I was from the Commission. But you said ladies first, but I'm also from the Commission, so I'm teasing you. But thanks. I just wanted to add to what Olivier said. I think that the role of Interpol and Europol and other law enforcement agencies has been particularly useful and particularly important. We see them participating in ICANN. We have now, in the context of ICANN, which many of you know about, a public safety working group, which is part of the Government Advisory Committee. This will help also to make sure that the actions taken by ICANN take into consideration also this aspect. And I just wanted to add one more aspect relating to the digital single market, in which e-commerce rules will be improved to help consumer trust and security, to make sure that cross-border transactions in particular are better protected, and also a review of the consumer protection legislation that we have to also reinforce the protection against fraud and other aspects.
Thank you, Megan. Michele.
Yeah, thanks. I have to actually kind of go against what Olivier was saying to a certain degree. It was inevitable. I mean, Olivier and I might agree on many things, but for that to continue for more than about 3 minutes, we usually know there's something wrong. I mean, while it's good and it's admirable and it's important that Europol, Interpol and other law enforcement agencies are part of the dialogue, they shouldn't be the ones driving it. In order for there to be trust in the internet, we need to be able to use it without having law enforcement looking over our shoulders. I mean, there's been a huge issue in the last couple of years, and it's not something that's gone away, and I can't see it going away overnight, where governments and law enforcement have taken it upon themselves to spy on our every movement. And so that my mother, for example, I use my mother as an example in a lot of these things, you know, she is concerned about her privacy. She's concerned about government surveillance. And if the governments and the watchers are watching, and who's watching the watchers, you can have that entire conversation, that's something that concerns me. But to go to the question about trust and building trust online, that's something that we, within industry, need to work on. That the companies offering the online sales, the platforms, the payment processing, all of that, that these standards that we use, that we deal with these things, that we deal with the online crime, that we deal with the malware, the spam, all of those kind of things. But government should maybe facilitate, not get too heavily involved.
And now the government.
I fully agree that the trust is in the core of all you have in mind, e-commerce, e-payments, e-services, etc. And here the government plays a key role, because in case of criminal accident, what we are doing? The first thing is to call 112, to call the government. The same is valid in the digital world, I would say. My colleagues from law enforcement agencies are not here, but I would say that they are very, very active and they protect us. I'm talking about Bulgaria, of course. They are in very good cooperation with Europol, you mentioned Interpol, etc. But what I want to underline is that the government and the business should work together in order to increase the trust in all aspects I mentioned in the beginning.
Thank you very much. I see a queue here, starting from the first one.
Thank you. I'm happy to be the first one. I'm Patrick Pennings from the Council of Europe, and I represent the Information Society department there. We're dealing with freedom of expression online and offline, but also everything to do with cybercrime and data protection. And thank you for this very broad and nice panel, but I'm missing one fundamental thing here. And even if the end users of the internet speak about the use of the free flow of the internet, etc., I'm missing one fundamental item, and that is the protection of the human rights of the internet users. And I'm sorry to say, if you're representing business, or if you're representing a government, or if you're representing the European Commission, that is not necessarily the first thing that you have in mind. And that's why we urgently, and that's what I miss in the panel as well, I think it's extremely important to look at those things. How do we protect the human rights of the internet users, whether that they be their private data? And I hear what you're saying about the law enforcement looking over the shoulder of business. I'm sorry to say, but I also see that business in many cases is very strongly cooperating with law enforcement, and not necessarily in a positive manner. So I think it's quite important that we resituate things a little bit. It's not just about access and speedy access to the internet, it's also how can the end user, how can the citizens of our societies have and keep their trust in this rapidly developing digital environment. It's not because it's rapidly developing that we should refrain from keeping human rights to the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Take this panel just as a starting point. We have the Council of Europe here, and all of you really dealing with human rights, just feel free to jump into the conversation. Even the access to internet has been acknowledged as a human right as well. So, sorry? I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Okay, let us give the floor to the gentleman over there and then come back here.
Okay, John Carr from the European NGO Alliance for Child Safety Online. Across the world as a whole, 1 in 3 of all internet users is under the age of 18. That means 1 in 3 of all internet users is legally a child. Now, so my question to the panel is, I assume you recognize that the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is an important international treaty which creates legal obligations on states and private sector players to respond to the fact that children have rights, and both for positive rights and protective rights and so on. And yet that particular international convention very rarely gets mentioned in debates of this kind. It's kind of an echo of the point made earlier about human rights, but bearing in mind, as I say, 1 in 3 of all internet users are legally children. Why is that issue not getting the same attention? I agree. The fact that I can't get Netflix in Bulgaria is grievously harming my social and cultural development. But when you set that against some of the other things that we should be discussing, please.
Thank you. You raised a very important question. I think none of the panelists would disagree with. Please.
Thank you. I'm Jacob Texa from the 6th Swedish ICT. And I'm not going to speak about human rights, which takes this down a notch, I think. But having a borderless digital single market within the EU is a good ideal. It's not going to happen in the next 5 years, unfortunately. It's not going to happen in, hopefully in 10. But what would be the first steps that need to be taken over the next 2 years, according to the panelists? What steps do we need to take now to start the process towards the digital single market?
Thank you. Would you mind if we collect all the questions here and then come back to the panelists?
Thank you. My name is Patrick Charnley. I'm an advisor at IFPI. We represent record labels around the world. We have 1,300 members, including the major companies. I wanted to pick up on the idea of copyright holding back the speed at which the internet develops. In fact, I would say that copyright content, this premium content, is a massive driver in the internet. And in fact, it creates some of the most innovative services that exist. Our members are licensing services in 28 European countries and strive to license more and more all the time. We want a digital marketplace. We are seeking that. But we also need a safe environment. And I would say that it is very important, as in a normal marketplace, that every player in the marketplace is protected. And where appropriate, there is a degree of regulation to assist that in happening. So I agree that there needs to be a balance, but there certainly needs to be adequate protection to actually drive the market forward.
Good morning. My name is Bertrand Lachapelle. I'm the director of the Internet and Jurisdiction Project. One quick thing. I'm not absolutely sure that the definition of somebody who is below 18 is a child. I call that a minor, and I think there's a slight difference in terms of respect. That being said, that's not the point I wanted to make. The digital single market is a beautiful umbrella. I was in the late 80s at the cabinet.
I would like to insert in the triangle between, the government, the business, the industry, the citizens and users. And remind to each of us, the citizens and users, they are gender, they are diverse. So I would like to not listen only about prostitution, but I would like also to listen about the sex workers' right. I would also to remind that child or minor, the majority are girls. I would like to also that the business do not exploit. It's good that the business is free, but I would like not to have a deregulation that just let all these users completely deployed of their data. And at the same time, I would like the government to not be policing on all of us, because still we have a right to privacy. Thank you.
Good day, my name is Amelia Andersdotter. I am a student of mathematics at Lund University, but I have also dabbled in internet policy over the last few years, and some of you may recognize me from that capacity. Now, the countries of the European Union that have the best infrastructure and the lowest telephone charges and the most commodities for end consumers to acquire on the market are the ones where they've had a conscious competitive policy with strong national regulatory authorities that ensure previous state monopolists in the telecom sector cannot abuse their dominant position. If the European Commission was truly dedicated to having a good single market, then clearly they would start somewhere there in ensuring that all member states have adequate competitive frameworks at the national level. But I wanted to raise something which is more ideological and perhaps goes back to our friends from Council of Europe earlier. Isn't it true that when we're shaping the internet together, we're facing kind of an ideological problem for society in that every measure that we undertake, almost, is completely focused on how individuals are bad and do not know what's good for them. We've had at least one statement, only in this opening session, that children don't know what's good for them and they need to be protected by somebody outside of themselves. The same thing goes for security agencies, or even with copyright legislation. We can't decide what to do with culture, we can't decide what to do with our personal data, we can't decide how to consume electricity. We need all of these technical devices in our day-to-day lives to control us from somewhere else or nudge us in the right direction. And isn't it true that when we ask for human rights to be part of the shaping of the internet together, we're actually talking about acknowledging the individual's right to make decisions about themselves in any circumstance, whether it pertains to their human rights, their cultural consumption, when they run their washing machine at their house, without having all of these objects and artifacts in their daily lives telling them they're not loyal to their society, they're doing it at the wrong time. They need to have some technical protection measure that makes them, more compliant with whatever norms society wishes to impose on them. And isn't it also true that the European Union could make a big difference by acknowledging these individual rights and saying that Europe is a place where we acknowledge everyone for their uniqueness, their cultural value, their individual capacity, and their talent? And isn't that what the European Commission should do also to get users on board with these larger projects of the digital market, saying that everyone has a right to be themselves and define their own relationships, and then consciously make IT policy user-centric to that effect? Thank you.
Thank you. And I suggest that we take the last one question, no more at this phase, and then come back to the panel.
Good morning, my name is Corinne. I'm a student at the Oxford Internet Institute, and I'm working on a research that very much focuses on internet governance and human rights. So I'm very happy to see that this is a topic that very much resonates within this room. And on that same subject, I was wondering if each of you could speak a little bit as to how you believe that what your responsibility is when it comes to human rights and making sure that those are protected online.
Thank you very much. A real variety of questions. I hope you've been able to follow them, from human rights to empowerment to individuals being really more consulting, to regulation and deregulation. But starting from this metaphor you just mentioned, that at the point the digital single market is simply a beautiful umbrella. And it was mentioned that Europe is kind of being unable to raise one flagship initiative which Europe might sell it to the citizens. I don't entirely agree, but for sure it is really difficult for the Commission to come up with initiatives which are going to be applauded by the citizens. Megan, we were even discussing before coming here that the news we have on roaming charges are not positive at all, having in mind that in trialogue procedures the Parliament and the Council just got blocked. So what are the next steps from now on coming from the institution?
Well, the next steps. First of all, I'll try to cover some of the issues that were raised as well. And Amelia, thank you very much for suggesting that the European Commission can resolve all problems in Europe. As you were a former member of the European Parliament, you know that the legislation is actually adopted and established by the Council and the European Parliament. It's just the Commission that proposes it. And of course, we go through a whole series of evidence-based impact assessments, etc., before even making a proposal. So I don't want to bore you all with all the details of legislative development in Europe. It's a complicated process. But unfortunately, although I'm sure the British would be very pleased to know that the European Commission doesn't have all that power, unelected officials don't have all that power. But seriously, you've all raised a number of very important and very interesting issues. First of all, on copyright, you've identified, of course, the importance of copyright for rights holders, and of course, no one wants to take away the important benefits of copyright or any other kind of intellectual property protection, because this is part of what creates a dynamic, active society and helps artists, musicians, poets, and various other people to generate an income. We want that kind of activity. What we want to have, though, too, is a situation where online copyright or national legislation does not limit exchanges across borders. So what is being proposed now in the digital single market is that a new legislative proposal be established for copyright. There was a huge online consultation already on what should be done, and now a legislative proposal as part of the Digital Single Market Initiative is supposed to be coming out soon. So that's on copyright. On another issue that was raised too, and again, this is one of the issues that Amelia raised, is the importance of competitive frameworks at national levels. But quite frankly, I think this is one of the really strong areas where Europe does work very hard. It has a pretty good regulatory framework. Of course, it's not perfect. The regulatory framework that was established for telecoms has made huge changes and huge benefits in terms of reducing costs over the last years since that last framework was established in 2009. The Digital Single Market proposes a complete review of that framework in order to see what is necessary, how things can be improved. It is, as many of you have said, very important to make sure that we have an innovative and future-proof regulatory framework. We have in the Commission a new better regulation procedure, framework, etc. And of course, everything has to be taken into consideration in that context. One of the things you will be interested to know is that the better regulation framework requires that internet impact be taken into consideration in all regulatory provisions that are brought forward. So this is also something that, of course, not everything is going to solve every one of the issues that we raise, but these are all things that are being worked on and looked at. With respect to people under the age of 18 or whatever age you want to cut off, it's clear that we have, as a public policy concern, the interest in protecting minors, innocents, people who don't have the capacity to make adequate judgments or who are targeted by fraudulent, nasty criminals, etc., whether they're under 18 or over. So we have, for example, something called the Better Internet for Kids program. We have made a lot of progress on this, and this brings together and helps to support a whole series of organizations that make sure that children are aware of what's going on the internet, what their rights are, how to pay attention to scam and groomers, etc., etc. So there are a whole series of things going on. Again, there's always more work to be done. And then just a last point that I would like to add with respect to public safety and security, etc. I think there are a number of things, and you raised it in the context of Internet of Things. There are a whole series of things also that the technical community and industry can do too, and we usually call this privacy by design, security by design, etc. And so building in these provisions, rather than coming at them afterwards and saying, that was done wrong, let's now attack it, take someone to jail. I think these can be extremely useful in making sure that the right environment is there, the way in which things are developed, the way in which things are rolled out can really help to develop that. So there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and of course I've forgotten it, but I'll come back. Human rights. Sorry, may I just say one thing on human rights? Of course, how could I forget human rights? Human rights on one aspect, of course, which is very important, is data protection. You know that a general data protection regulation has been under discussion in the Parliament over more than 2 years. Again, a proposal by the Commission. Council and Parliament are discussing it. We still don't have a final solution, but again, it's progressive. That's one important element. But the other that I wanted to raise is that in the context of ICANN and the Government Advisory Committee of ICANN, a new human rights and international law working group has also been established, parallel with the public safety group, which again, it's not to impose, it's to make sure that new developments and new activities take into consideration those aspects. So sorry.
Thank you very much. Is there anything uncovered by Megan? Yes. Okay.
Big multi-billion-dollar company. They make their money from us. They make their money from our content, from our addiction to their platform. You look at, say, ICANN has been mentioned several times on this. On the one hand, you have the rights holders who want to protect their copyright. On the human rights side, you're saying, okay, well, as a user, I want my right to privacy. And then you have law enforcement going, well, I need the ability to protect you from yourself. And those three things, in many respects, while they could potentially be complementary, they're actually hitting each other. They're coming smack bang against each other constantly. I mean, at the moment, there's a proposal within the ICANN space dealing with WHOIS around a user's ability to obfuscate, to hide, to protect their privacy in the WHOIS records. So that if, for example, I want to register, I don't know, mnalen.org, I could say put other data there and not have to publish my personal mobile phone number. I had my personal phone number in WHOIS, and I used to get some wonderful phone calls. It was awesome. I did. So now I have the office phone number. But I mean, trying to balance all of those things together, I think it's a challenge. It's an ongoing issue. The reality is that it's all getting much, much more complex. I mean, the idea of your fridge talking to your, I don't know, the supermarket. So when the fridge says, well, okay, you don't have enough milk, I'm placing an order for you. I mean, there was a case there a couple of months ago where I think a fridge was accused of spamming somebody or something. And in order for that to work, on the technical side, we need to see IPv6 adoption. But, hands up who's actually able to access the internet over IPv6. Okay, there's about 3 of you. And I don't have the answers. I wish I did. But I think, it's a challenge and it's something that we're not going to solve quickly.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Countries. And is there any specific national policy which would allow us to be sort of intermediary with the countries?
May I add an additional question to that, and that relates to the investment that was raised before, and I forgot to answer about that because there's the European Fund for Strategic Investment which is developed. But this is perhaps an interesting question also from a national point of view on broadband rollout and the way in which you can increase this investment.
Thank you for this additional question. Before answering to those questions, I would like to add something as answer to the questions you put. DSM is a good idea. What are the first steps towards DSM? Somebody asked. Here are the panelists in front of you, and we are talking and you understand us because we are interoperable using English. We have to be interoperable in European Union, and not only in European Union, but also all over the Europe. So interoperability is one of the first steps we should take in order to be successful. The other thing is electronic identification. Without electronic identification of the end users, it is much difficult to interact in the digital world. And now back to the last questions. Bulgaria, as a neighbor of 3 candidate countries, can play a significant role for opening the DSM towards these countries. We can foster the collaboration with these countries in areas that are of key importance. How? I will give you an example. We are working very hard at the moment with our neighbors from Romania, which is member state, and Serbia, which is not a member state, on a common project which foresees interconnection between the fiber networks of the 3 countries. This idea came up 2 years ago when I visited Bucharest, and I have proposed this idea to my colleague at that time, Minister Dan Nica. He is now in the European Parliament. Nothing happened since beginning of this year, but now we renewed the idea, and last February I have presented the idea to Commissioner Oettinger. He appreciated very much this idea and encouraged both countries, I mean Bulgaria and Romania, to act very fast. And within 10 days we are going to have a meeting, the 3 countries, the ministers of the 3 countries, in order to kick off this process. I'm sure that in the next 3 weeks, or let's say in a month time period, we'll be ready with the project, and the ministers will go together. This is very important to underline it, together in Brussels, and to present the idea in front of Commissioner Oettinger. I asked him that this project needs only one simple thing: support, I mean financial support, from the European Commission. He promised to try to find some funds in order to realize this project. We can offer, I mean, Bulgaria can offer support to our neighbors in areas of providing, as I said, high-speed broadband for all, especially in the rural areas, because probably you know that Bulgaria is in top 10 countries worldwide from broadband, high-speed access to internet in the cities, which is not true for the rural areas. But having in mind that more than 70% of Bulgarian population live in the big cities, we don't consider this as a big problem, which does not mean that we are not working to cover the rural areas with broadband high-speed access. I want to mention one more thing as a potential area of cooperation between Bulgaria and non-EU neighbors. This is cooperation, collaboration in the area of national computer emergency response teams, activities, and in cybersecurity. There are some initial steps between our country, our national CERT, and Romanian one. Why not to establish such kind of cooperation with our friends from Macedonia, from Serbia, from Turkey? Of course, we can help them also with the adoption of the respective legislation. But Megan talked a lot about the legislation, and I don't want to repeat in this field. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you see, governments are here to help. Olivier and Hans for last words, and then I'll invite people tell us whether we have some questions coming from Twitter. Olivier.
Thank you. I wanted to address some of the questions and points that were made from the floor. First, with regards to the gentleman from the IFPI that mentioned that premium content is a massive driver of growth. Yes, it is a massive driver of growth. But the problem today that we have is we don't have a single digital market for this content. And so wherever you are, you might not be able to access this content. And there doesn't seem to be a valid reason for this to be happening when we are speaking about a single digital market. With regards to the Internet of Things, Konstantin spoke about the need for privacy. And indeed, today we have a huge, I wouldn't say problem, but challenge on the horizon with the growth of big data and having all of your information being put together and effectively providing some kind of a profile of you online that might actually incorporate information that is incorrect as well. So it's not only the fact that there's a profile being done about you, but it might also be an incorrect profile, and that categorizes you in one slot or another. There needs to be legislation on this. I'm not sure how that will be worked on, and it's not something that can be done in 24 hours, but we need to look at this. Bertrand mentioned the problem of roaming for data. I mentioned earlier that roaming charges for calls, voice calls, were reduced dramatically, and yet we're absolutely being raped by telcos as far as mobile broadband is concerned. And it's incredible that to this date, with the cost, the actual real cost of telcos being very low, we're not in a position to be able to push this through and reduce those charges. That would be such a huge step to ubiquitous telecommunications, where we would be able to access the internet wherever we are in Europe and not being concerned about how much we're going to have to pay at the end of the month. And then finally, on the points that Amelia made, I personally agree with many of those points, most of them, I would say. The one which I really think is extremely important is to have policy that is user-centric. The internet has grown to what it is today because it was user-centric, and it needs to remain so.
Talking about human rights, security, privacy is probably as far away from the technical community that you can come. But on the other hand, it's one of the most important things also for the technical community to focus on. And there has been more focus on this in the IETF, designing the internet standards. And there are security standards that can be deployed more widely than today, for instance, DNSSEC. But one of the challenges in getting technical solutions out there is that the businesses need to take their responsibility and actually implement them. But that doesn't solve it all. We also need them to be implemented in such a way that the users are able to use them and trust them. And this is sort of an educational issue and also a usability issue. Do you want the password on your phone? It's much more difficult to do a quick tweet. Or if you don't, then you could lose all your personal information. That's a very, very simple question. So the technical community is definitely committed to work to increase the security of the internet, but we need to work together, all of us, to do that.
Thank you very much. I'm now looking at Wolf Ludwig. Where are you, Wolf? So I'm not looking at you, I'm looking for you. Because he is supposed to has gathered some questions from yesterday from all of you, questions or statements. I don't see him, so probably you notify him that we're looking for him. Are there any questions coming from the Twitter wall, Lorena, or not something really important?
I think there's a complete debate going on Twitter at the moment.
So difficult to summarize, probably.
Well, thank you very much. We're having a bit of lack of microphones. I'll try to give a brief overview. There is a completely parallel Twitter discussion going on. We have remote participators, but they're being quite passive, so they're just listening. I'm also seeing that we have participants in the live streaming. So I would say the main questions that we are having over Twitter, one of them concentrate or focus on questioning why should things be regulated instead of regulation being concentrated and focused on human beings. And this is one of the main discussion points within the Twitter streams. There are also other topics like copyright discussions. There are also discussions with regards to let me try to have a small glimpse with regards to geocaching and geoblocking. Especially the copyright discussion is been going on for a while now. And there is a lot of concern as well that within this discussion, issues like child protection is being mentioned, since apparently many users don't see this as an issue within the digital single market. There is, for instance, one user that says that after this discussion she's getting more confused because of the mixing of many other issues that has nothing to do with that, like cybersecurity as well. I think it's Belma from the youth saying something like this. Of course, there were some participants also explaining that they feel just shied away from this conversation due to the fact that they are non-EU members and they are somehow amazed that we're having a conversation differing between non-EU countries and EU countries. And I think that was pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you very much. You keep us posted if there is something new on the Twitter. Well, I see a hand over there.
Can we get an apology for the comparison without roaming rate?
Sorry?
Yeah, there's a note on Twitter which asks, can we apologize to the comparison of rape to roaming? And I use the term in the sense that we are being absolutely abused by telcos. It's insane how far they've gone.
I think this is more of a linguistic, cultural thing. I mean, I understand the lady's concern. No.
Please, just use the microphone for the remote participants so they understand what is going on.
Sorry, I do not want to enter in a discussion, but rape, it's not a linguistic. Rape happens on bodies of people. So it's really bad. We can use other. We have many languages, we have many words. Please ask not to do this comparison. It's offensive for a survivor. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure if this is an offense to anyone, Olivier would offer an excuse, but really human rights also is part of us discussing it freely, and sometimes when you need to limit yourself into 140 symbols, you use probably stronger words than needed. Any other questions from the room? Yes, please.
Louise Bennett, BCS, Chartered Institute for IT. In connection with the digital single market, I was very pleased to hear you talk about consumer protection, because it seems to me that one of the most important things for cross-border e-commerce is that consumers should understand where the liability lies and how to get redress if their e-commerce transaction goes wrong. Could you comment on that, please?
The question was referred to Megan. Megan, please.
Well, the details, of course, are being developed now. But the new and the revised legislative package, I think I have to check my pieces of paper, which will all fall off if I look. I think that the proposal is foreseen for the end of 2015. If you like, we can discuss the details later. But obviously, they don't exist yet because the legislative revision is being developed now. But this is one of the important elements of the digital single market package. Since I now have possession, 9/10 of the law, of the microphone. Could I just add one more thing about investment, which I think is also an important factor, and some of you raised it, in investment in broadband. It's something that the European Commission has tried to push a number of times to encourage better broadband investment, to try to use structural funds and various other funds within the European Union basket of funding possibilities to make sure that this is one of the sources of investment. The European Fund for Structural Investment, I think that's what it's called now, the FC anyway, which is to use other sources of funding and provide guarantees to, for example, the European Investment Bank to encourage funding, of course also has an element of broadband investment. So there are theoretically new and better possibilities to try to push a bit more investment in some of these areas. And these are also, I think, going to be reviewed also in the revision of the telecom framework in the future to see how better regulation can also help to drive forward better investment from the private sector too.
Good. I don't see many hands in the air. Hans would like to probably add something.
Yeah, I would like to be a bit political here, since there are so many politicians around me. Once you start to fund projects in broadband and so on, please make sure that you build secure and future-proof services. Make IPv6 and DNSSEC requirement when government money is spent on building internet infrastructure.
Just adding to that, I mean, for us as a business, the depletion of IPv4 is going to cause us a lot of pain. I mean, it's one of the limiting factors for a lot of companies in the digital space is as you connect more and more devices, more and more things, websites, apps, you know, for them to be secure, in many instances you need to provide and use unique IPs. IPv4 is gone. It's dead. We need to be in IPv6, and it's you and government who can actually help drive that forward. I can't create the demand. I've spoken to the ISPs, and they're like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. Whereas if the governments were to say, okay, you want that contract, you have to make sure it's IPv6 enabled. I'll respectfully disagree about DNSSEC, but I'm on the record as always respectfully disagreeing about DNSSEC. I mean, the thing around, you know, investment and, you know, I think Bertrand's point is an excellent one. I think others have echoed that. I mean, you know, you're afraid. I mean, I meet delegates at conferences who are afraid to turn on roaming on their mobile phones. It's 2015. This is insane. I mean, the idea that I live in fear of my telco bill, that I kind of go cap in hand into my CFO's office, kind of afraid to find out, you know, how much did I rack up on that trip to country X last week? It's nuts. I mean, it's, sure, I know that there's a lot of other more important things that people worry about, but connectivity is a huge driver. Where you see greater connectivity, you see greater innovation, you see interesting things happening. I mean, I think some of the examples that Megan mentioned earlier about, you know, companies being able to start up in far-flung corners of Europe and build themselves up to have hundreds of millions of users, that's fantastic. That's what I love about the internet, the fact that a small company, somebody who has an idea can do that. They can disseminate that cross borders and they can build something up. That's great. But if the telcos are charging you €1,000 in roaming charges because you were in Bulgaria for 3 days and forgot to turn off roaming, that kind of breaks the entire thing.
May I add something? Well, yeah, to come to the roaming issue again, which seems to always create a lot of excitement. First of all, the last roaming regulation, Roaming Regulation 3, I thought was wonderful, of course, because it really created a market-based structural reform of roaming. And if you look at roaming costs since the introduction of the first roaming regulation, they have really gone down quite dramatically. There's no question that there's still problems relating to data, etc., etc. But data was also addressed in that roaming regulation 3. So many of the applications and the timing of that roaming regulation 3 come into force in 2015, in 2016, etc. And slowly the market prices were to come closer to wholesale prices. So there were a whole series of things. Now, as we've talked also, there's a current roaming proposal from the Commission on the table, being discussed between Council and Parliament. Unfortunately, it's not making much progress. But again, this will be an issue that will be looked at in the overhaul and the review of the telecom framework. But I just wanted to go back to the IPv6 issue. And this is because I don't understand the technical aspects. So I'm not supposed to admit that. But this is really a question for the engineers and the technical people, which reminds me of a joke, which I have to tell you. So, you know, the optimist says that the glass is half full, and the pessimist says that the glass is half empty. But the engineer says that glass wasn't made properly. It's not the right glass. So again, this comes to me to this IPv6 issue. Some of my engineering colleagues tell me, in fact, IPv6, it's interesting, it's useful, has many benefits. But in the future, apps and various other things don't need IP addresses in order to connect, etc. So this is a question, you will have an answer, I'm sure, but this is a question to the technical and engineering community. Are there changes in the way in which the internet works, in the way in which apps and other internet-based facilities are going to transform the way in which we use internet protocols, numbers, names, etc.? Is that something that's going to develop over time?
I'd have to defer to my more technical colleague on the far side, but you know, there's always going to be an evolution with the technology. I mean, technology by its very nature has to evolve. I mean, I like your joke about the engineer. That's very good. It's good. It's cute. It's very good. I mean, this is one of the discussions that I think a lot of us who operate a lot in the domain space, we've looked at a lot. It's like, you know, are domain names as important as they were 5 years ago? Will they be important in the future? Will anybody actually care? And it's something you can talk about endlessly. But you know, on the domain name thing, I'll always say, well, hey, open up a newspaper, open a magazine. You're going to have to advertise something, and a domain name is a quick and easy way to get to something. On the IP address thing, I'll have to defer to the gentleman over there. But I think, you know, that it's, unless somebody comes up with something new, and I've missed that memo entirely, IPv6 is the way forward for now, at least.
I mean, the way internet works is that all devices connected to the network needs an address. So for humans to use it, we need names as well, because these addresses are too complicated. But then you could replace the names with apps, so you don't need the names anymore. So yes, the names industry could be out of business. Well, sorry for poking that back at you. But an internet without IP addresses wouldn't be the internet, it would be something else. So if we're going to replace the complete internet with something else, sure. We've now tried for 10 years to replace the IPv4 internet with IPv6 internet. It's going to take another, hopefully, hopefully not 10 years, but it's not going to happen next year. And the reason it's important is that the way internet has developed is that it's an open network where any device can connect to any other device, which means that anybody can make innovations. So if you want to have an open digital market, anybody should be able to develop services and put services on the network. If we don't have addresses for everybody, somebody will be left outside. And that's unfortunately those coming late to the table. So those countries who were early on the internet, like UK, is now starting to sell off all the IPv4 address space to other parts of the world, like Norway, according to a latest press release. Not that we were late, but we probably have too much money. But this makes an imbalance in who can develop services on the net and how we can grow. So therefore, I'm pushing this because without a working internet and an internet with the ability to grow, there won't be a digital market, single or not.
Just to just to add to this, that we also need to be aware that IPv6 and the introduction of IPv6 and its use in the Internet of Things will raise some serious privacy issues due to the way that the addresses are allocated. And this is something which there might be regulation needed as far as the recording of that information is concerned. Tracking of people, tracking of what they're saying, etc. So that's another new chapter that we're opening up with IPv6.
And just briefly, really briefly, the point about the IP addresses and the requirement, just to put in context, if you look now at the aftermarket in IPv4 addresses, the prices are varying from, I think on the low end, it's about €3 for an IP address, going up to 5, 6 and higher. I mean, I've seen prices that vary widely. So the thing is this, is that say you want to launch a new service here in Bulgaria offering, I don't know, connected chairs, I don't know, whatever. You need to be able to assign an IP address to each one. If you cannot access the chair, as a stupid example, over IPv6, you have to do it over IPv4. If you don't have any IPv4 addresses and don't have the money to buy them, then that business will never take off. It won't exist.
Sure. Thank you very much. Very many details, most of them instrumental, but I think we all here agree that if Europe wants to re-win back the leading position in the digital economy, it needs this digital single market. And I was trying to change my head and look at our debate more from the point of view of a consumer, of a user. And I think you say if you disagree with me, but if there are a couple of things we all would sign for, that would definitely be no roaming charges. Because what is the point of having them being abolished today, this year, or 2 years later? I mean, European citizens want to see that we are moving in single digital market without digital borders. Then we as users, of course, we want better choice. Of course, we want, from abolishing the borders, lower prices. Of course, we want, as the advisor of the former Minister of France mentioned, we want a much more connected continent and much more innovative Europe, where all the startups can really scale up. And this is where the Commission should deliver. Yes, you want to take the floor once again. And then after you, I'm sorry that we would get 5 minutes later, but after you, I would turn to the rapporteur, yes, to try and summarize, if possible, what we've discussed here. Please.
Right, so I want to get back to some of the things that Megan has been raising in the panel, because I know that she's here the representative of the European Commission. First of all, I disagree that just because the Parliament and the Council are legislators, it does not mean that the European Commission cannot show leadership or initiative. In fact, because the Parliament and the Council are legislators, it's more important that the European Commission is able to have a coherent framework of individual rights and user-centric policies, so that the rest of the institutions have a policy framework to discuss that actually makes sense to them and to everyone else. Hearing the European Commission talk about IPv6 as some kind of theoretical technical issue that doesn't concern them is worrying to me, because IPv6 is the very manifestation of how we make individuals connect directly with each other on a network of networks, which we believe is the internet. It's incredibly important that we define the right of everyone to talk autonomously with each other, rather than having a watchman or a kind of middleman in the middle telling us, like, when can you talk with this person, when can you talk with this other person, when are you allowed to start a service, when are you not allowed to start a service. Most ISPs in Europe do not allow users to run servers in their own homes. What sense is there actually in such a policy? Why is it that you cannot put up your own service in your own home and be available to other individuals on the internet? As for what users in the European Union want, I think historically, in the 90s, we've known Europeans to build their own networks on the internet and having their own servers and emailing programs and, not to say the least, which is an issue close to my heart, file sharing platforms where Europeans have been leading for like 20 years in the development of this. We have no indication that European citizens don't want to use the internet to be in touch with each other culturally, socially, economically. The problem is we have bad legislative frameworks that are created in Brussels and in the member states that stop European citizens from doing this. Where the European Commission can start is listen to people in the copyright consultation, for instance.
Okay, thank you very much. Next time you should have been invited to the panel. Now, I see that Wolf, I'm sorry, just Wolf has arrived in the room. So Wolf, you want to share with us some comments from yesterday, very briefly, and then going to the rapporteur.
Okay, we have, during the reception yesterday evening, we have collected some questions. We had an open call and I approached some newcomers directly and asked them for the opinion about the digital single market. Please tell me one sentence or one question or whatsoever. One of these remarks was the digital single market should be about economy, not about lobbying. It was said it's strange that in a digital single market you still are as a user confronted with messages like this video is not available in your country. Another one was, don't tamper with free market. The next one was referring to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is not security. Then there was another nice remark with commissioners like Mr. Oettinger, forget about single market. Another critical remark was with secret negotiations, you can never achieve a digital single market. The next one was European Union single market is limited to members only, excluding other European countries. We have to prevent monopolistic markets. So these were basically some of the comments I collected yesterday during the reception.
Thank you, Wolf. Mainly comments. So, with your permission, I'm not going to give you the floor. Or, okay, Olivier, just because we're running out of time, but as a representative of the user.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm surprised by the negative tone of many of these comments and saying, you know, there's never going to be a single digital market and so on. It's for us to make sure that there is. We are here meeting, we know we're in the whole business of internet governance and discussing this and trying to make sure that our views are actually made clear for governments to be able to help in having that single digital market. If we don't make our voices known, then of course it's not going to happen. But let's not just say it's not going to happen anyway. We have to really look towards that to work. We don't have a choice. It has to work.
Okay. Now, Tano Tank from Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you have the floor to summarize the discussion.
Yes, thank you and good morning, colleagues. Director Pennings is standing there and queuing for the question, but I think, Patrick, you have to do it next year then in Brussels. The 6 points or 6 key messages. I think the discussion was very interesting and of course there were some different views expressed, so perhaps my points are going to be rather general, so possibly also acceptable for most of the audience. The first point, internet is a powerful tool for achieving bigger economic growth and to promote innovation and well-being in the society. All stakeholders need to make efforts to make that reality and not just a concept. Second point, European digital single market is a moving target as technology develops fast. Governments who are generally considered to be slow and bureaucratic need to be more dynamic and flexible. Third point, European digital single market and multi-stakeholder internet governance model are mutually reinforcing. Europe should be at forefront in promoting open, free and secure internet in light of the major global internet governance events this year. Fourth point, due attention should be paid to other issues than merely economic issues. Trust should be promoted and human rights of internet users, children as a particular vulnerable group. Fifth point, there is a need for good regulation and governments and the European Commission can play a positive role. This should, however, not lead to over-regulation or be detrimental to freedom of information. And the sixth point, there is a need perhaps for a European flagship initiative which is real and touches users. Roaming was mentioned and also investment into broadband infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Tano. I think that was a very, very good and fair summary of what we've discussed here. I myself, as a moderator, I'm not concerned about the different views we have. I actually very much welcome this policy of the European Commission to do the public consultations, especially on such very important projects like the digital single market. And I would very much want to see this project being completed within this mandate of the Commission. And I think that's in the very interest of all of us as users, for all of us as representatives of the businesses. So with these few words, I would suggest that we have a break. Am I correct?
Almost.
Yeah. On the substance or on the procedure?
This is an administrative
okay,
comment.
Thank you very much.
If you don't mind, just before we break up, I'm tempted to say much more, but and that is that there is a session on JIPO, the Global Internet Policy Observatory, as a side event. And for some reason, in one of the versions of the program, it says that separate registration is required. That's not at all true. Everybody is invited. And the more the merrier, and we really want you to participate because it's something that we think is of particular interest to those of you in this community. So if you don't mind, I just wanted to make that announcement to make sure that no one felt excluded from that session. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm sure nobody feels excluded. I just take the opportunity to wish you a wonderful stay in my city. And I'm sorry to staring at you. Do you want to say something?
Yes, my name is Thomas. I'm one of the members of the EuroDIG core team, and I'm sorry to say that I'm and Fredrik will be for a few short minutes between you and the coffee break. Because of this, just for your information, those who have been in Net Mondial last year have witnessed the first ever attempt to write a document in an open and transparent multi-stakeholder process, the Net Mondial statement. There is a long discussion in the IGF about having more tangible results from IGFs and local and other initiatives. There will be an attempt to produce a document, start producing a document before the Brazil IGF, which is starting more or less now. We have undertaken the same attempt for the first time in EuroDIG, led by Fredrik, to produce a document in an open and inclusive working group before the EuroDIG. This is the document, you find it also on the EuroDIG website. And this is just to help you frame, understand where this belongs to. So this is a first attempt to start producing documents in the framework of the EuroDIG. It's not a document that has a formal status that will formally be adopted. It's the first time. Not everybody has been aware of that this is going on. So this is really also to raise your awareness that this may continue in the future in the global IGF, but also in EuroDIG. I give now the floor quickly to Fredrik to explain to you what has been done by this working group. Thank you. That's the other network.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Thomas. My name is Fredrik Donk. I'm working with the Internet Society. I will walk you very quickly through these documents. We start working on network neutrality. How ambitious was it? So here's his story. 2 months ago, we opened up a working group. It was really open and inclusive. It has been published. The basic rule was whoever wants to become a member of the working group would be a member of the working group. And we end up with really robust and solid experts that I want to thank here. there were really multi-stakeholders. We had Luca Belli from the Dynamic Coalition, we got Gonzalo Lopez from Telefonica, Thomas Gross from Deutsche Telekom, there were EBU, EuroDIG here, there were Facebook, there were my estimate colleagues from the Internet Society for the technical part, etc. So there were really a wonderful multi-stakeholder group, and we started working on a paper on network neutrality. We didn't go the classical way. We didn't spend much time in trying to define generally what network neutrality was. Rather, we made and had an approach which I feel was really clever. We start approaching network neutrality by different angles. So what does it mean from an end-user perspective? What does it mean from a human right perspective? What does it mean from a business perspective? And from a technical perspective? So going forward, we exchange on this, and the outcome is the paper that you will find out, not only on the website, but on the tables here on the EuroDIG. And let me tell you, this paper is just imperfect. It's really far from being perfect, but that's the beauty of the paper, because if each of us would have drafted the paper, we would have done it differently. So at the end, we have a paper that we're really proud to submit to you, because we can live with this. We had to adapt within this ecosystem, and at the end, we had to moderate some of the business side, some of the human rights side, but ultimately, everybody can say, I'm happy with it. And I hope you will be happy as well. So what's the next step? The next step for us is tomorrow at 8 o'clock to have a special session for whoever wants to know more about it. In the meantime, we would ask you, because we realize that this is just the outcome of a working group, a very great working group, but a working group, we would like to have your view. So there will be, on the EuroDIG website, something that is open next to this paper for you to express your view. Whether you like it, you don't like it, whether you can live with it, whether you have any view that you want to share on it. Again, remember, it's not a perfect paper, but this is something that should actually collect a kind of broader consensus. And if we feel that we can reach up to the consensus, we will open for an agreement at the end of the EuroDIG, maybe after the panel on the network neutrality session. We will test the audience and see whether we can obtain a rough consensus. Remember the definition of a rough consensus. It's not really a majority. A majority of 50% plus one is okay. A majority of 75% is even better. So we will just test whether we can have a rough consensus. And I already would like, on behalf of the working group, to thank you for any view you can express of the document. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the beauty of democracy, never produces the perfect result. Enjoy your coffee break, and I really hope you are going to have a very fruitful discussion throughout the whole day.